everyone. So the first time I saw the mark that my Uncle Jay left on my Aunt Maybelline, I knew I'd always be on her side. It went from her elbow to her shoulder. It was red and purple. It kind of looked like Australia. This is internal bleeding, she explained to me. She didn't want to go to a doctor because the doctor would ask questions that she didn't want to answer. And she was a nurse, so she felt like she could handle the situation herself. Go to the police, I told her. No, she said. It's not that simple, she explained to me. She said the family would lose face. And my Uncle Jay was the main provider. He made 7 times more than she did. And more than that, she didn't want my cousins to grow up without a father. And so she didn't go to the police. And for the next 10 years, my Uncle Jay and Aunt Maybelline would fight. And they fought a lot. And I always lived on the edge, because I was always waiting for my Aunt Maybelline to be killed. I didn't worry about my cousins not having a father. I didn't worry about my uncle going to jail. All I thought about is, when is my aunt going to be killed? And so one day, I went over to their house, and my aunt was sprawled out on their lazy boy. And at this point, she had prescriptions for Xanax, Prozac, and Ambien. And I felt like she had taken them all. She was asleep with headphones on, and I walked over to her and I shook her, and her eyes kind of fluttered, and she went back to sleep. I could hear my uncle in his room watching sports. I didn't know what to do. She wasn't dead, she was okay. So I just grabbed my cousins and we went to the mall. And then 2 weeks later, she explained to me the night before they had a really bad fight. And she had been dragged across the garage floor, and there had been a hammer and a life-saving miss. I don't want to die. I don't want to die before my dad, she explained to me. And I told her she should get a divorce, and she should leave him. And she agreed, but it never happened. They just got into this cycle where they would fight and reconcile, and they would fight, and then they would reconcile. But my aunt developed a sort of claustrophobia. She had all the walls in the house removed, and she put in windows and doors. And she told everyone she liked the light and the air, but she told me, no matter where she was in the house, she needed an angle to escape. Because she had learned that if she ran to the bathroom, or if she ran to the bedroom, that's where the real damage could be done. And over the next several years, there were about a dozen times she would call me, and I would pick her up from the local Walgreens, the gas station, or just a few blocks down from their own house. In 2011, in the winter, my Aunt Maybelline came to my house, and she made me feel a big lump on her head. That night, they had gotten into another fight, and she had ran towards one of the exits, and he had pushed her, and her head had slammed into a piano. I don't want to die. I don't want to die before my dad. When I was younger, I could take it. My body could take it, but now I'm old, and I could die. My aunt was about 57 at this point. The next day, she went to the doctor, and the next day, my uncle sat in a suburban jail. What my aunt didn't realize is that he wasn't just going to sit in jail for a few days and then come home. It wasn't a punishment. There was going to be a trial. And if convicted, their family would lose everything, financially at least. And this didn't just affect them, this affected her kids and her grandkids too. So my aunt decided not to testify at the trial. And she hid in a Red Roof Inn in downtown Chicago. And nobody in the family asked her to do this. She just did it because it was her instinct to provide for her kids and her grandkids. And that to me is sacrifice, that to me is strength, and that to me is what moms do all the time, all over the world. So when my aunt didn't testify, the case was dropped. And my uncle was let out. They were forced to live apart for a couple months, and he had to go to group therapy for domestic abusers. Once they reconciled, a few months later they had another fight. And I went over to the house and I scanned my aunt for marks. And I said, "Did he hit you? Did he hit you?" And she said, "No, no, no, no. Your uncle never gonna hit me again." And I said, "How can you be sure?" And my aunt said, "Your uncle is scared, is terrified of being raped." And I didn't make the connection. It turns out in the domestic abuse counseling group, my dad had met a Korean man who had been in jail for the same offense. And he told my dad that he had been raped several times, and it was very painful, very painful. And more than that, Asian men were the prized bitches in jail because we have smooth skin, a smaller stature, and we're very rare in jail. And your uncle have bad hemorrhoids, so it's gonna hurt so bad. And I wish, and they never fought again. Like, well, at least till now, they have not fought on that same level. And I wish that there had been a different reason, that my Uncle Jay had had a revelation, and maybe he has, and he keeps it to himself, and maybe they have, and they keep it to themselves. But all I know is that I'm happy that when I see Aunt Maybelline's number come up on my phone, I'm not seized with panic and terror. And neither of us live our lives waiting to be killed. Thank you.
Small in stature, and you are very rare.
And if I was in jail, I would be the queen bee.
You'd be my bitch. Archie is a writer and a storyteller, and he's a Moth Grand Slam and Biggest Liar winner, and he's working on a collection of short stories. Tell me just how far you're into the project.
My goal is to have about 12 or 13 stories, and I'm at about 6 or 7. So, not too bad.
Are they autobiographical?
They are about my crazy family.
Oh, fantastic! Who doesn't want to read a book about soft skin and small men?
And they're much funnier than that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. He's just delicious, isn't he? Our next storyteller is Monty.